Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining this session. This is day 5 of Oracle SQL training. And in this session, we are going to learn about constraints in SQL. So when we are saying that constraints, so it is a flexibilities or features provided by SQL so that we can add a few filters, the restriction on the table columns, so that whenever we will have to insert data into that specific table for the columns, we can have the option to provide correct values to the table. So this constraint restrict users to insert incorrect values or invalid values. So that's the main features of constant, and obvious for just a statement purpose that constant are the rule enforced on the data columns of a table. So that's correct that constant we are going to add on that column label only, so that that column can have that specific validations and the limitations. The constant ensures the accuracy and the reliability of data in the database that discussed that with the help of constant only we can make sure that any incorrect or invalid data will not be inserted into this database table. Constant can specify when a table is created with a create table statement, or you can just use alter table command to just if you create a table and you forget to add the constant. So yes, with the help of alter table commands, you can add the constant in the table later once table is created. So this flexibilities we have for the constant. So there are few constants which we will discuss. So I have just listed down saving constant, which we will discuss. And first and the most, the part is not null constant. The not null constant allow us to restrict the any specific column so that user cannot escape providing value for that specific column. So that it can be mandatory to while inserting data to insert data in the specific columns. For example, you can see we have the customer table, and that customer table having few columns that ID, name, and age. All these three columns are associated with not null constant. It means that whenever we will insert data into this customer table, it's mandatory to provide value in this all these three columns. We cannot skip providing values in this table in the column. We have to be mandatory insert data into the table because the not null constant we added in the table for this column. For example, suppose this is our database. So our database table name is XX customer, and we have to insert record in this table. So for example, this customer ID, name and age, all these three columns are not null, right? We added a constraint, right? So let me add here is a constraint like that. See, oh, and still this constraints. For example, we created this customer ID constraint as not null, right? Not null. It means that whenever we will insert data, it's mandatory to provide value in this column. This column cannot be null. But yes, if we didn't provide any constant to all these three columns, this all these three column can be null. So for example, let me insert one record. So for inserting the record, suppose we are going to provide name as John, age as 15, and address is, for example, it can be that no. So when we will insert all these three records on this call three columns only, it will throw an error. So it will throw an error. Why? Because this first ID is if first ID column having the constraint as not null, and we cannot skip providing value to the column which is having the not null constraint. So it's mandatory to provide value to this column while inserting data into this table. So that's the benefit of using constant. If you want to restrict to user to provide a specific value or provide value to any specific column to be mandatory, that's why we have to use not null. So here you can see if we all these three columns are not null, right? If all these three columns doesn't have not null constraint. So while inserting data, for example, we added ID as 1001, we given a name as no John, but we don't have age information. We can skip and we can provide address as Mohali. It can be possible, right? Correct. But this is not correct because the first ID cannot have the null value. That's the benefit of constant adding constant in a specific table. And here you can see this is a command to add the constant in table while creating the table. And if you want to add constant once table created later on, you can use alter table commands with the modify so that you can modify the structure of this customer table by adding the not null for any specific columns. By default, each and every column having the value as null so that this column can store null values. So here while creating table, if we didn't provided any constant to this address, it means that by default null constant is there. It means that this address can have the null values. So the same have been written here. By default, a column can hold null values. If you do not want a column to have null values, then you need to define such a constant on the column, specifying that null is not allowed for that specific column. The same here it's defined. So now next we move to the next constraint. The next constraint is default. So default constraint is also our most important part that whenever we want to create table in a such a way that we want that whenever user will provide any value to the table, that's fine. For any specific column, if user is not going to provide values, we want to store any specific values. That's time we can use default keyword. So for example, this is our database table and address we want to make a default. So we want to make a default as an A and slash A. So it means that whenever we will insert record in table and if we will not provide any value to this address column and slash A, that is mean not available value will be automatically inserted in this column. So that's the purpose of using default values. So here suppose we have to insert records 1002, name is Sam, age is 20, and we are not going to provide any values, right? So it will also correct. And by default, when we are not providing value, by default value will be n slash a. So let me make it into light. So by default value will be n by a because we added the default constraint in this column. So again, if we want to insert new record 1004 or 1003, let's give name as Alex, age is 22. And if you will not provide any value, by default the value for the address will be n by a. So that kind of solving that kind of requirement, we are using default constraint on that specific column. So now next to the next constant, that is unique constant. Unique constant allows to restrict the user to insert duplicate value on any specific column. For example, you can come to this database. This customer ID is a value which we can treat as a unique values, right? Same customer ID cannot have that more than one customer. For example, if we have another customer as Suresh, and by mistake user provided the value as 1003. So right now as this column having not null constant, so this 1003 with Suresh age is 23 and values we want to provide as Kolkata. It will insert this value, right? It will insert this value, this will be correct, right? Because we don't have any unique constant over this customer column, customer ID column. But later, for example, if we added constant in this column, right? Constant, and the constant name is unique constant in this table. It means that this column cannot have duplicate values. For example, all these values are inserted here. Let me add this here. So when user will try to insert new record with the same values available in the customer ID, constant ID, it will throw an error. It will tell that 1003 is already there and cost ID is unique column. So we cannot allow you to insert these duplicate values. So in this case, it will throw an error. Right. So this record will not be inserted into database due to this not null constraint. So we have to pick a new record, new columns, right? New values. So that user will go and will select 1004 and then this will be inserted into the database. And how we can add the unique constant in any of the column. So for adding the unique constant, we have to use unique keyword. And when we are providing the column name, by that time only, we can provide the constant that you can see here, unique constant, so that this column can be considered as a unique. So here we want to add unique constant over the customer ID. So we will use unique keywords here in this first column. So that's the way we can use unique constant. If you will go that unique constant prevents two records for having identical values in a column. In customers table, you can see here, for example, you might want to prevent two or more people from having the same identical age. For example, here they added unique constant over the age in this example. It means that in the customer table, two customer cannot have the same age. That kind of restriction they are given. But here in our desk, we want to make this constant as a unique for customer ID so that this customer ID cannot be duplicate or cannot be the two customer having the same ID. So that's the purpose of using constant, unique constant. So now let's move to this next constant, that is primary constant. And here if you will see, when we are using unique constant can have null values. So that's why here you can see in our database table, this column having that unique constant, and here you can see we have the null values. It's allow the null values, right? So when we will talk about the primary key will never allow the null values in their column. So for example, we are going to insert one records that 1005 and we make that customer ID as a primary key. Primary key. This is the constant we added, right? On that cust ID. It means that customer ID is now primary key and this column cannot have duplicate values plus this column cannot have null values. So primary key is a combination of two constraints. Primary key is a combination of two constraints. The one is not null and second one is unique. Unique. So primary key is a combination of two constant, not null and unique. This is the interview questions. Remember, whenever you go for SQL related thing, that most common questions they are asking is that difference between unique key and the primary key. So in primary key, we cannot have null values, but in unique key, we can have the null values. So all these three values can be inserted here. And if you will go obvious in storing the same values again, it will throw an error. And if we will provide any unique values, it will allow us to insert. And obvious, we cannot have the null values. So if you will try to store value without providing any value in the first ID, it will throw an error. That new records, let me give as here. This column cannot, this for this record, this first ID cannot have the null values. So it will throw an error. And that error reason can be first ID can't have null value as its primary key. It is right. The same way, reason behind this error is this will be yeah first ID can't have duplicate value as 1003 is already present in table for LX. So that's the reason behind these two error, right? So we are done with the primary key. And obvious that you can see here also, it's mentioned that a primary key is a field in a table. Field, it means the column, which uniquely identify each records in the database table. So when we have any column, primary key column in the database table, so it means that that column having the unique values, and we can identify complete row using that specific primary key. It means that if suppose we have to search the student to having the ID as 1003, it means that we know that 1003, that column cust ID is unique. It means that we will get only one record with 1003. Also, a primary key column cannot have null value. That's true. A table can have only one primary key, which may consist of single or multiple fields. When multiple fields are used as a primary key, they are called as composite key. So one more point I want to highlight is that in constraint key, in unique constraint, we can have multiple column with a unique constraint. For example, we added the customer ID as a unique. We also can have the address as unique. That if we want to store a customer information from different district or different state, so we can add address column as a unique constraint, so that in a district we cannot have the two customers from the same district. So here you can see, if we will make that address column as a unique, it means that while inserting the information for Suresh, like we updated the new ID, but again, if we will insert with the Kolkata value, it will throw an error because this address column will be having unique constraint. It will not allow to insert Kolkata again because Kolkata is already there for the ID 1003. So that's the differences. But yes, in a table, there will be only one key, one column with primary key. So just like unique key, we can have multiple column in a table with unique key, but in case of primary key, we cannot have more than one column with primary key. But yes, so for example, customer ID is primary key, and I want to avoid address also a primary key. It's not possible because in a table there will be only one primary key. We cannot have more than one primary key in a table. And one more thing, here we discuss about
And
the composite key. So composite key is something that if you want to make a combination of two column as a primary key. For example, we can have a same customer ID or something like take example that Kolkata, right? So we can have the Kolkata as we can make a address as a composite key by adding primary key in this address and this customer ID column. It means that whenever it will check the duplicate values, it will check the combination of these two columns. If combination of these two column will be same, then only it will throw an error. For example, here you can see if we created this table and this table having the primary key and primary key will be combination of, for example, we added the primary key combination of column, cost ID, cost ID and address. It means that here, suppose we are going to store information like 1001, name is anything like A, customer 1, age is 24 and address is Delhi. Now we want to insert another customer with the same ID 1001 and customer name is customer 2, for example. Uh, Customer 2 and age is 34 and address is 1. So this time it will not throw an error because whenever, like as obvious, customer ID is primary key here and address is also primary key, but it will not throw an error. Why? Because here we added customer key. The primary key is a combination of two columns, customer ID and address. So it will throw an error only when this combination of these two columns will be same. So right now you can see we got to know that 1001 is already available in the database table. But if we will make a combination of 100, that customer ID and that address, so it will be like 1001 Delhi. And when we will check, it will be 1001 and Mohali. Mohali. So both are different, both are not same. That's why it's allowed to insert that record into this table. So again, suppose we want to insert another record 1001 and we'll give name customer name anything, customer 3 and age is 34 and let me change the age to 23. And again, if we will insert the address as Delhi, so this time it will not allow, right? It will not allow to insert this record because when we will go for combination of this one and this one, it will be same as 1001 Delhi. And this combination is already present in this table. So that's why in this time, this will throw an error. And the concept when we are making one or more than one column together as a primary key, that's called as composite key. So that's the logic behind composite key and the primary. Now we have another column constraint that is foreign key. Foreign key is also known as reference key. So if you will talk about foreign key, a foreign key is a key used to link two tables together. So how we are going to link two table with the foreign key, I'm just going to explain. So this is sometimes also called as a referencing key or reference key. A foreign key is a column or a combination of column whose values match a primary key in a different table. It means that here you can see order table having the customer ID as a reference of customer table as ID. It means that this order table is linked with this customer table, and with the column, which column they are going to make a link with this customer ID, linking with the customer table with this ID column. So for example, the same example, if we will take, this is our customer table, our order table we already created, right? So this is our order table. So for example, small. So this is our order table, and suppose here we have three customer, right? So let me remove these duplicate values here. So we have three customer available, 1001, 1002, and 1003. And suppose today customer 1001 came to our shop and they purchased something, and we want to store information of that purchase in that order table or the customer order table, right? So what we will do, we will take information and we will insert that information into that. So for example, here the order, we suppose the order is OD 001. This is our order ID, and the order date is for today date. So today is 25/09/2024, and the customer ID. So customer 1010 came for purchasing. So we given customer ID 1001, and the item they purchased something like pen, and the quantity 5, and the total amount is 200. So this information we store. And the same thing, right? Customer 2 came and they purchased something. So there will be new order ID for each and every transaction we created in this customer order. So it will be OD 002. And again, this customer came on the same day, 09/2024, and the customer ID is 1002. And they purchase like pencil. And the quantity they purchase one, and the price is 5. If suppose another customer came to our shop and they want to buy something, and the customer, so on this case, that it will generate new order ID that will be OD 003, and that order date is for, suppose it came again tomorrow, today only, so 25/09/2024, and the customer ID they are saying that 1005, right? 1005. So when it will come to this point and we'll try to insert this value, so here it will allow us to insert, right? So as we don't have any constant here. So suppose customer 1005 buys something, that notepad 10 quantity and having price 150. So this database table will allow to insert these values because we don't have any constant here. For example, we later updated this table and we added the constant, right? We added the constant here, and the constant we added as a reference, the references. And for this customer ID, what is the references? So the reference is, what is the name of the table? XX customer, XX customer, and which column? That the cus ID is the column, cus ID. So here we added the reference to this customer ID from the XX customers table with the column cust ID. It means that this customer ID value will be same as the cust ID value available in the customer table. So now here 1001 is available in this customer table, it will allow to insert. 1002 is also available in the customer table, it will allow to insert. Whenever user will move to inserting this record, right? This record, and this 1005 is not available in the customer table with this cust ID column. So here you can see 1005 is not there in this customer table, it will throw an error, and this record will not be inserted into database table, and this will generate an error. And the reason for error is that 1005 is not available in parent table. So here in this case, this column, the table, customer table will be child table, and this order, customer order table will be child table, and the customer table, this xx underscore customer table will be parent table for this child table. So that's the benefit of using reference key or foreign key, so that it will restrict user to insert incorrect values or invalid customer or invalid data into this table. Because if that customer is not registered in our database, we cannot deliver any goods or any items to that customer, right? So this is our business requirement, that we are not going to deliver anything, any new orders, any orders to new customers. So if any new customer came, so first the customer need to be registered in our database. So the customer information will be stored here, just like 1005, and name can be that Samuel, age can be anything, and this will be US. Then only it will allow us to insert this information into this database table. So once we will have the data available for this 1005 available in the customer table, then it will allow, right? So it will be correct because 1005 is now present in parent. So that's the differences between the primary key and the foreign key. Foreign key is also known as the reference key. So while creating table, you will not get any foreign keywords. You will get the keyword as references. So references define that this column is reference to the previous column, that previous table, that is the customer table or the parents table, with the column that is ID mentioned here. And in our example, we taken that cust ID here, cust ID, right? We take an example cust ID with the table XX customer, and our table name is customers order. The customer order is a child table and customer is the parent table here. This is the customer table. So that's the relation between the primary key and the foreign key. And in the next constraint, we have check. Check constraint allow us to check the values before inserting data into the table. For example, this is our customer table, and we want to make a check on this customer table that customer age less than 18 is not allowed to register in our database. That we don't want to make any person to a customer which age is less than 18 years. So for example, if we make that column, this is our table. So this table having the primary key, this first ID as a primary key, primary key, and this age we have added the check, the check, and the condition is age is greater than equals to 18. It means that until that value for this age column is greater than equals to 18, it will not allow to insert. For example, if we are going to insert that record, it will not allow to insert duplicate value. So let me make changes of this one. Okay. And suppose if we have to restore value, unique value is 1004. We want to give the customer name as customer 4, and age is 16. It will throw an error. It will not allow us to insert because we added the check on the age column that age should be greater than or equals to 18. So error reason will be uh, age 16 is less than 18, so it will not allow to insert records. That's the error reason. And suppose we updated this 16 and we added given the values as 22. So this time it will allow. Correct. Because age 22 is greater than 18. So that's the reason we are using check constant if we want to restrict any column to store any specific values. For example, the same way we are using check for gender, that male and female. We don't want to insert any employee details or any customer details which doesn't have the gender as male or female. So we can add that kind of restriction in our database table. That's why we are using constant. So now next constraint is index. That index constraint we are using to add in our table, so that based on that specific columns table, we can retrieve data in efficient way, in the fast way. So that's the constant, and yes, constant having that deep topic. So in upcoming days, we will have a separate session related to index constant. Just for brief, the index is used to create or retrieve data from database very quickly, as I mentioned. An index can be created by using a single or group of columns in table. When the index is created, it is assigned a row ID for each row before it sorts out the data. So I told you that when we are creating index on any table, and obviously we are going to provide column name for that. So the records available in the table will be arranged in a way based on that values available in this specific column, which column we make as index, so that it can retrieve data from the table in efficient way. Proper index are good for performance in large database, but you need to be careful while creating index. A selection of fields depend on what you are using in SQL queries. Obviously, it's depend on the data, what kind of data we are going to store. For example, we create a table and we are generally not going to create age column as an index because age column can have the various values, same values, right? Multiple customer can have the same age, so there is no logic behind adding that the index on that age column. So we are using index on a specific column, which column can have few less columns or few less values and all, so that we can retrieve that specific data from the table based on that column. So that's all about index. We will learn in coming days. So let's move to the practical side. So the same way here, we created the customer, right? Created that customer database and that order database table. So we will use same example and we'll see that how that constant is working and how we can add the constraint to our tables. So let's create this table first in our database and name of the table is access customer. So let me open new sheet. This database is an issue in my laptop database. Let me go for another database. So I have two connections created here for two different database. So one database Oracle underscore Access is not working right now. There is some issues. So I connected with another database, right? So now this is our database and let me create a table in this database. So for creating table in database software, we have to go for create command. So I will use create table and the table name I already copied that access customer. And this is the syntax I am using while creating. So I given this bracket open and end and the semicolon defined that column is the code is going to end. And now between this, I will provide all the column name by providing the tab. So what is our first column name? Our first column name is cost. So this is the first and the type of the data will be before discussed is I will use number. Again, next column is name. So name and I will give name as varchar2. 200. Next column is age. My age can be the number values, so that's why I will use number. And next column is address. And obvious address can have the character values, so I will use varchar2 and again give address and so on. So now our SQL queries is ready to create customer table. So I just have to execute this query. So once I will execute, access customer is created. If you want to see the table is created or not, so you can just copy the name and then you can use select star from table name. You will be able to see all the columns for the table. It means that our table is created. There is another way to check the columns available for the table. So we have DESC. DESC it means a describe and the table name. So this DESC command tells us the compiler to describe me the information of this customer. So once you will execute, you will be able to see the information of this customer table. So you can see with name, this all are the column name, first ID, name, age. This null here is the constant and this type is the data type here. Right, you can see here null is nothing, right? So let me pin this one, then I will show you next. So here you can see once I will use pin here, it means that this information will not be removed. and this will be pinned here. So that next time when I will execute another query, so this result will be stored here, and another having, you can say, escape output one, and this is our escape output. If I will pin here this one too, so this two will be pinned, and if you I will click here, the new it will display the result in new script. So that's the reason behind we are using pin, so that we can store the result, so that later on we can use reference as a reference. So here you can see we executed the select star from this table, and we don't have any records available in this table. So let me pin this result. So this query result will be pinned here, so that we can later, once we will execute this code again, we will be able to see this result. So now let me insert a record in this table. Right. So for inserting the record, we have the insert command. So I will insert into table name. And here we have to provide the columns name, which all columns we want to insert. So I want to insert values for customer ID. I want to insert values for name. I want to insert values for age, and I want to insert values for address. So these are all the column name for which we have to insert the values. Then after we have to use values keyword, and now in the bracket we have to provide the values which we want to insert in this all these columns. And I use this one so that I cannot forget to provide this and of this bracket and this semicolon. Now here we have to provide the value. So the first value is null, right? So I don't want to provide any values to the first column, so I will provide a null. Right. So as I given the column name here, so I have to provide the value here. So I first provided null values, and after that here we have another values as John for the name. So this John is a string value. That's why we have a string or character value. That's why we have to provide single quotes here, and we have to provide the name. So the string value always be in a single quotes. So these two values is done. Now comma, and after that we have to provide age. So age here we use 15. So I will provide the 15 here. And if this age is number value, that's why we are not providing single quotes here, right? So number values not required single quotes, comma, and this will be the address. Address is Noida, and Noida will be in single quotes again. So now we are done with this value. And once I will click on enter, it will allow us to insert record into this table. You can see record inserted into table. And if I will select this table, you can see John 15 Noida is inserted, but this first ID column having the null values. So why? Because by default, each and every column constant is null, so that we can insert null value in the column. But we don't want to insert any record which doesn't have customer ID. That's the restriction we want to add. That's why we have the constant as a not null constant, right? The first constant. So that whenever we will create table, we will define the constant to the column. That column cannot have the null values. So here, let me add another table. So let me create another table. So just I'm going to give another name. So name of this customer table is XX customer, and I want to give this table name as XX customer 2, and let me create. But before creating, I want to make this first ID as a not null. So here after the data type, I will go and I will give value as not null. This is the constant, not null, not space null. Any dollar now. It means that we are defining the customer two table, and the column cost ID will be not a null. So that this cost ID column cannot have the null values. Now let me enter. So you can see after customer two is created. Now if we have to insert a record, so let me copy the same values. And while inserting, I will just change the table name. So I'm just going to make this table name as quality customer two. Now if I will go for insert, it will throw an error. You can see we are getting error. And what is the error? You can easily identify the error. So you can see cannot insert null values, right? Cannot insert none into the table XX customer 2 and with the column as cust ID. So this cust ID cannot have the null values, right? Why? Why? Because you can see clearly mentioned cannot insert null into this specific column. So why we cannot insert null? So that if you want to validate, what you can do, you can just use just describe keyword and provide the customer the table name. So table name is customer two. So I will use customer two, and you will be able to see this not null. So not null constant with the column as customer ID, first ID. And earlier it was, you can see, when we created customer table, access customer, this customer table for this null column, we don't have any values. It means by default it is null. But now when we created this table, this time the value is not null. It means that this ID column cannot store null values. So that's the magic of using not null. So not null will will not allow us to insert null value in this column. So if suppose instead of that, if I provide any value 1001, it will allow us to insert. You can see this 1001 inserted into this table. It's taking a bit time to execute. You can see one record inserted. And if you will query this XX customer 2, you will be able to see the value. Yeah, right. So that's the use case of not null constraint. Now, next constant is default. So default constant is going us to allow any default values to that column. So for example, for address, I want to add default values. So let me add another table. So let me add another spreadsheet, which spreadsheet where we will use only table. So this is the spreadsheet I use to create tables only. So I will create another table and will give the name as customer 3. And in the customer 3, I will make the address as default, and what value I want to make a default. So we adding the values like default keyword, and then we have to provide the values. I want to make the value as n/a. So as n/a is a string value, that's why I given single quotes here. So now I will execute this code to create table. So this code is executed and this table is created. So and if you will go and check this table description, that the customer 3, right? So here let me go to this customer tree. If I will execute this one, you can see here, you can see check is not able to, we are not able to see the check, the default here, but it will be used when we will insert records. So here let me insert this new record, and this is our customer tree table. And let me, I don't want to provide values here in the address, and address value is our fix. Here you can see most of the people done mistake while inserting record, that last column having the null values here. And this comma define that we have the value after this, right? And here we are not providing any value. That's the wrong. So you have to remove this comma from here too. And once I will go and click on insert, you can see one record inserted. And this record inserted where? This record inserted into the customer tree table. So let me do query in this customer tree table, right? So you will be able to see that record inserted, ID is 1001, name is John, age is 15, but the default values is n by a, because we didn't provided any value in the address column. And by default is a store value as n by a. For example, we are going to store another values. Another values is just like ID, customer ID 1002. Name is, what is the name you use? We use Sam. Sam, age is 20. Right, I don't want to provide any value here again. So again, it will be default as n by 8. So record inserted. And if you will go to the query, you will be able to see that Sam inserted with n by a value. So let me insert one more column, one more row, and that row will provide the value. So that row values, for example, we are going to use LX and providing the values. So LX and column we have to provide as 3, and is 20, let it be the same, and provide the value as Mohali. So here you can see when we are provided values. So here you can see what mistake I was about to do, that we provided the column here value. How many values are there? 1, 2, 3, 4. But how many columns we define here? 1, 2, 3. If I will execute, I will get an error. You can see too many values. So that number of column we given and number of value we given, that's too many values for this column. That's why we are getting this error. So we have to add another column name here. So the last column name is address. So I've given address. Now if I will execute, you can see this table will store the Mali values, and this n by a will not be there this time because we are providing value here. If we will not provide value, then it will take default values. If we will provide values, it will take the value which we are providing. So that's the reason behind using that the default values. Now the next is unique. When we are saying that unique, it means that that column value will be unique and it cannot have duplicate values. And it can, remember, it can have the null values as we already discussed, right? So let me go to here. Let me create another table, and this table is table name will be 4. So customer 4 I given, and here this customer 4, for example, this customer ID, I am just going to make this as a unique, 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 right? So let me create this value, this table here. So customer 4 is created. Now let me go and insert the value for this one. So this is our 4. So let me add one 4 here, and here as we make this customer ID as a unique, it means that this cust ID will always have a unique values. It cannot have duplicate, but it can have the null values, right? So let me check with null values. So cust ID, I don't want to provide any values, so I will provide null here, right? So if I will insert, you can see the record will be inserted in this cust table. You can see it's allow us to insert. If I will go and you select four table, we will be able to see the value null here in the cust. Although even this customer 4 having the customer ID as unique, but it allows us to insert null values. Right? If we'll go and try to insert, so give me some time. Huh? So here cust ID, and if you want to insert another record, that table name we have to provide 4. So table 4, and here again if we want to insert null values, right? Instead of providing values, and if we will try to insert uh, just I executed the code, and you can see that one record inserted. And if I will go and check that column, the table, you can see we have the null values and values is stored. So as unique constant is allowing us to insert null values, and null values is not a value, it's a something like empty, right? And empty cannot be compared, right? So that's why it allows to insert two null values, three null values, four, something like, right? But if we cannot store duplicate values, right? We cannot store value that can have the same already exist. So for example, let's go and instead of null, if I want to store 1001, it will allow us to insert 1001. And if we will go here and I'm just doing a scroll down to a scroll up here. You can see this is going up and down. So don't be confused here. So here you can see we have that value 1001. And again, if you want to insert the same ID with another name, right? Instead of null, if I'm going to pass 1002, so it will, sorry, 1001 again, right? For this another customer, for customer John, right? So, what's the value here? Okay, so when I will execute, it will throw an error. Again, it will say that the duplicate value we are trying to insert. So let me execute here, and you can see unique constant. This table violated, unique constant violated. So it will not display the column name here, but it will throw an error that unique constant violated. So what you have to do, you have to check which column having the unique value, unique constant added. For this customer, which column having the unique constant. So as I created, so I know that this customer ID having the unique constant. But if suppose someone others created table and they given you table to insert records, then how you will identify which column having the unique constant, so that you can just go and do the description DESC and the column table name. So you will be able to see here in the description. It's not showing here. So another way to check is you can just select the table, right click on the table, and here you can see we have option for open declaration. You can see open declarations. Once you will click here, it will open the declaration or the details of this customer. So it's not opening. Just go and shift F4. I'm just trying, right? I'm checking that how it's working. Yeah, this time I think it will come. It's taking time. Yeah, you can see. So whenever you want to see the description of table, so what you have to do, you have to just select the table name, and after selecting the table, click on Shift button and go for F4. Shift plus F4. Once you will go for Shift plus F4, your screen will be held for a few seconds based on database connectivities and all. So now you can see after that you will be able to see the details here. So these all are the column for this XX customer 4 call table. These all are the columns. These all are the data types of the column. And this you can see the type nullable or not, that can values store null values or not. Here you can see the default, yes. For this address column, we have default values n by 4. And here if you will see the constant, right? Constant tab. If you will click here, you will be able to see the constant. It's loading, and you will be able to see the constant. And you can see the constant is unique constant and added over which column. So once you will click, you will be able to see the column name, that is cust id. So the cust id having the unique constant added. So that's the way you can check. So okay, fine. So we know that this table having the unique id, customer id is a unique constant, so we cannot store same values. So if you will add another unique values, that values will be stored in this database table. It's taking time to execute because this is the cloud database. Sometimes due to network issues and the server issues, it takes time. So if you will go and check queries, so new record in insert, where we inserted the records. So here we inserted the record in customer 2 table. That's why we are not able to see here. So let me make it 4. 4 is our recent table, right? So I will go for insert. The one is already inserted. If you will go and do the query here, you will be able to see this 1003 insert. So that's the use of unique key. And as we know that in a table, there can be multiple unique key columns. So for example, here we are creating another table name as customer 5, and that customer 5, we want to make this, for example, this address as a unique, right? Again, we want to make this address as unique. So let me remove this default values here. So in our database table, more than one column can have the unique constraint. So it will allow us to create table first. So you can see our table 5 created, and now in this table, two columns are unique. The first ID and address. It means that this two column cannot have the duplicate values, right? So let me go to insert again this record here. So for example, this is our column name as table name as 5. And suppose this is 1003 and address is Molly, we want to insert, right? So it will allow us to insert record inserted. And if we will select the search the data from this table, we are able to see these values, right? So suppose in next values, we are going to provide unique ID, customer ID, that's good, but I don't want to change the address as Mohali. Once I will click enter, again it will throw an error, that unique constant error for that unique constant violated. Why it's saying that? Because this address column we added for table 5 as unique, and unique, it means that we cannot have the duplicate values. That's why it's throwing an error. So if you will like change to Delhi, it will allow us to insert records now. So you can see this record inserted. So this is all about unique. So now let me go for primary key here. So let's complete this primary key and the foreign key and the check constant in upcoming sessions, right? So let's close today, and in the next session we will start from the primary key. So thank you so much everyone for joining. If anyone having any doubt and want to ask anything, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your questions. So thank you so much for joining this session.